Star Tiger. The Star Tiger was a passenger plane operated by British South American Airways, flying an important transatlantic route between Europe and America. On January 28, 1948, it took off from Santa Maria in the Azores, heading toward Bermuda with 31 people on board, 25 passengers and 6 crew members. Among them was Air Marshal Sir Arthur Cunningham, a well-known military leader. Everything seemed normal as the plane made its way across the Atlantic. The crew kept in touch with radio operators, reporting their position and weather conditions. At one point, radio officer Robert Tuck asked Bermuda for a position check but didn't get a clear signal. He tried again a few minutes later, and this time, Bermuda responded with a bearing of 72 degrees. Tuck confirmed the message, and then silence. That was the last time anyone heard from the Star Tiger. The situation quickly escalated, and an emergency landing was declared. A massive search effort began, with 26 planes covering the ocean for a total of 882 flight hours, while ships scoured the waters. But despite days of searching, not a single piece of wreckage or sign of life was ever found. The Star Tiger had vanished without a trace, adding to the eerie legend of the Bermuda Triangle. Investigators struggled to explain what could have happened. The experienced crew and lack of reported mechanical issues made the mystery even more confusing. The weather wasn't severe enough to be an obvious cause, but one detail stood out. The plane was flying at a low altitude of just 2,000 feet, which was likely to avoid strong headwinds. This left very little time to react if something went wrong. In the end, with no wreckage, no distress call, and no clear answers, the official report simply admitted defeat. The cause of the Star Tiger's disappearance remains unknown. Star Ariel. The Star Ariel was a passenger plane operated by British South American Airways, set to fly from Bermuda to Kingston, Jamaica on January 17, 1949. On board were 7 crew members and 13 passengers, many of whom had originally been on the Star Lion, another BSAA aircraft that had suffered engine trouble near Bermuda. To avoid delays, the Star Ariel was designed to complete their journey. The plane took off in perfect weather, and Captain John Cletha McPhee, a highly experienced pilot, decided to fly at 18,000 feet to take advantage of the clear skies. About an hour into the flight, he radioed Kingston Air Traffic Control, giving details about his position, altitude, and estimated arrival time. A few minutes later, he sent another message confirming he had reached a key navigation point and was switching to a new radio frequency. After that, nothing. The Star Ariel never arrived in Kingston, and all attempts to contact the aircraft went unanswered. A massive search effort was launched, covering 55,000 square miles of ocean. The USS Missouri, along with the aircraft carriers USS Kearsarge and USS Lafayette, joined the hunt, scanning the area for any sign of wreckage. But after days of searching, not a single clue was found. No debris, no oil slicks, nothing. The search was officially called off on January 23, 1949. Investigators were left with little to work with. The weather had been clear, the crew was experienced, and there were no reports of mechanical issues. However, on that day, there were strange communication problems. Planes in the area experienced radio blackouts and static, with some disruptions lasting up to 10 minutes. Oddly enough, these issues cleared up shortly after the Star Ariel vanished. The investigation also noted that Captain McPhee switched to Kingston's frequency earlier than usual, while still close to Bermuda, which might have affected any distress calls. But with no wreckage and no clear explanation, the fate of the Star Ariel is still a mystery. Flight 19. Flight 19 was a squadron of 5 Grumman TBM Avenger torpedo bombers with 14 crew members on a routine training mission on December 5, 1945. They took off from Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale, Florida, following a triangular route, first east to Hens and Chickens Shoals for bombing drills, then north over Grand Bahama Island, and finally southwest back to base. Led by Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor, a veteran pilot with over 2,500 flying hours, the squadron completed their bombing runs without issue. But soon after turning north, Taylor radioed in that his compass had failed and he was unsure of their position. Believing they were over the Florida Keys, he unknowingly led the squadron further out to sea, despite ground stations urging them westward. As fuel ran low and the weather worsened, Flight 19's radio transmissions grew more scattered. Their final message suggested they were preparing to ditch in the ocean. A rescue mission was launched immediately. A BPM Mariner flying boat with 13 crew members took off from Naval Air Station Banana River to search for them. But then, another disaster. Shortly after takeoff, the Mariner vanished. A nearby merchant ship later reported a mid-air explosion and an oil slick, likely caused by a fuel leak, a known issue with the aircraft model. The search was massive, Over 5 days, aircraft, ships, and submarines scoured 250,000 square miles of ocean. But despite their efforts, no trace of Flight 19 or the BPM Mariner was ever found. The Navy concluded that navigational errors, faulty compasses, and bad weather doomed Flight 19, while the Mariner likely exploded mid-flight. But with no wreckage recovered, the mystery only deepened. U.S. Navy MartinPBM5. On the evening of December 5, 1945, a U.S. Navy MartinPBM5 Mariner seaplane took off from Naval Air Station Banana River, Florida, on a mission to search for Flight 19, a group of 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers that had mysteriously vanished earlier that day during a routine training exercise over the Bermuda Triangle. The Mariner, part of Squadron Training No. 49, carried 13 rescue personnel, ready to locate and assist the missing pilots. Shortly after takeoff, the Mariner sent out a routine radio message, the last one ever received. Later that night, the crew of the tanker SS Gaines Mills spotted a massive explosion lighting up the sky, flames shooting 100 feet high and burning for nearly 10 minutes at a location matching the Mariner's flight path. The tanker's captain ordered a search for survivors but found nothing except a slick of oil and aviation fuel. Around the same time, the escort carrier USS Solomons also reported losing radar contact with an aircraft in the same area. The PBM-5 Mariner was known to carry nearly 10 tons of aviation fuel, and its flexible fuel lines had a dangerous flaw. They could loosen in rough conditions, leading to leaks. Fuel vapors could build up, making the aircraft highly vulnerable to mid-air explosions. Given the eyewitness reports of a fireball and the aircraft's history of fuel issues, the most logical conclusion is that the Mariner suffered a catastrophic explosion. But despite extensive search efforts, it was confusing that no wreckage or bodies were ever found. With both Flight 19 and the PBM-5 Mariner vanishing on the same day, the mystery only deepened, adding to the legend of the Bermuda Triangle. Douglas DC-3. The Douglas DC-3, registered as NC16002, was an airborne transport DST-144 variant. It flew from Miami to San Juan, Puerto Rico, where it landed with landing gear issues. Despite this, it was scheduled to return to Miami that same night with 29 passengers and 3 crew members: Captain Robert E. Lindquist, First Officer Ernest E. Hill, and Stewardess Mary Burke. Before takeoff, Lindquist reported problems with the landing gear indicator light and low aircraft battery levels. Though recharging was advised, he chose to proceed, relying on the aircraft's generators. After departure, the crew radioed the Civil Aeronautics Administration saying they couldn't contact the control tower but were continuing to Miami. During the flight, Miami's air traffic control received a routine position report. The final transmission came later, with the crew reporting they were south of Miami. But strangely, this message was picked up in New Orleans instead. After that, all contact was lost, and the plane never arrived. A massive search followed. The Coast Guard, Navy Air Force, and civilian aircraft scoured the region from Puerto Rico to Florida, but no trace of the plane or its passengers was ever found. Investigators found several issues: uncharged batteries, excess weight, and shifting winds, but without wreckage. The exact cause is unknown. C-119 Flying Boxcar. The Fairchild C-119 Flying Boxcar was a twin-engine, twin-boom military transport aircraft developed from the earlier C-82 packet. Built for transporting cargo, personnel, and mechanized equipment, it was widely used by the United States Air Force and other military forces from the late 1940s through to the 1970s. On the day of the accident, it was a routine military transport mission from Homestead Air Force Base in Florida to Grand Turk Island Airport. On board were 5 crew members and 4 Air Force mechanics, totaling 9 personnel. During the flight, the aircraft vanished without transmitting any distress signals. Despite extensive search and rescue efforts, no wreckage or survivors were ever found. The lack of evidence made it impossible to determine the cause of the disappearance, fueling speculation and contributing to the mystery surrounding the Bermuda Triangle. The investigation into the disappearance of C-119 faced significant challenges due to the absence of physical evidence. Without wreckage or flight data recorders, determining the exact cause was impossible. Experts could only theorize about potential factors such as mechanical failure, adverse weather, or navigational errors. But none of these explanations could be confirmed. The official report classified the aircraft and its occupants as missing and presumed dead, leaving the incident an unsolved case. Piper PA-23. On June 20, 2005, a Piper PA-23 took off from Treasure Cay International Airport in the Bahamas, heading for Fort Pierce, Florida, and the area fell within the defined boundaries of the Bermuda Triangle. The aircraft, registered as N6886Y, was piloted by its owner and carried 2 passengers. Since the flight was filed under instrument flight rules, the pilot was prepared to navigate through possible bad weather. Shortly after departure, the pilot contacted the Miami Air Route Traffic Control Center for clearance and was instructed to fly toward Freeport before heading northwest at 10,000 feet. Everything seemed normal as the plane followed its assigned route along Grand Bahama Island. But then, communication issues began. The pilot struggled to check in on new frequencies, making several attempts before contact was finally re-established. He confirmed holding altitude and received updated weather information. However, shortly after, he reported severe turbulence and asked for help getting out of the worsening weather. The air traffic controller informed him that the plane was in an area of heavy precipitation but would be clear soon. That was the last anyone ever heard from the aircraft. Radar recorded its final position, and then nothing. Search and rescue teams, including the U.S. Coast Guard, were dispatched immediately, but no trace of the plane or its passengers was ever found. The search was called off the next day. According to the National Transportation Safety Board, the plane likely crashed due to the pilot flying into severe weather, losing control and impacting the ocean. Investigators also noted that the air traffic control hadn't fully informed the pilot about how intense the storm really was, a factor that may have contributed to the tragedy. Because this all happened in the Bermuda Triangle, theories quickly surfaced. It is also believed that electromagnetic anomalies interfered with the plane's instruments, but official reports point to one thing: bad weather and human error as the most probable causes behind this mysterious disappearance. Piper Navajo. On November 3, 1978, Captain Irving Rivers, a seasoned pilot from Eastern Caribbean Airways, took off on a solo flight from St. Croix to St. Thomas in a Piper Navajo. It was supposed to be a simple repositioning flight to pick up passengers later. The weather was perfect: clear skies, warm temperatures, nothing out of the ordinary. Midway through the flight, air traffic control suggested a small course adjustment to avoid light rain shower. Captain Rivers acknowledged and made the change without issue. As he neared St. Thomas, he got clearance to land. The control tower even spotted the plane's navigation lights as it approached, just about a mile from the runway. Then, out of nowhere, the lights vanished. The aircraft disappeared from radar. No distress call, no signs of trouble, just gone. Search and rescue teams rushed to the area near the airport, scouring the waters and coastline. But despite extensive efforts, no wreckage, no debris, and no trace of Captain Rivers or his plane were ever found. The fact that the aircraft disappeared so close to landing in perfect weather has left people scratching their heads. Naturally, many have linked the incident to the Bermuda Triangle, adding yet another mystery to the legend. Beachcraft Bonanza. On December 4, 1970, pilot Bruce Gernon took off from Andros Island in the Bahamas, heading to Palm Beach, Florida, with his father and a business associate. They were flying a Beechcraft Bonanza A36, a single-engine aircraft known for its reliability and performance. This model, introduced in the 1970s, was powered by a Continental IO 550B engine producing 300 horsepower. It could cruise at around 190 miles per hour and had a range of about 1,060 miles. Shortly after takeoff, Gernon spotted a strange, lenticular-shaped cloud directly in his flight path. He tried to go around it, but it expanded too quickly, leaving him no choice but to fly through. Inside, everything was calm with no turbulence. But as soon as they came out, another massive cloud appeared. This one formed a tunnel-like structure about a mile wide and 10 miles long. As they flew through it, Gernon noticed odd spiraling lines on the tunnel's walls moving counterclockwise. The tunnel seemed to be getting smaller, and by the time they exited, the plane was completely surrounded by a thick gray fog. The ocean and the horizon had disappeared from view. Then, things got even stranger. The navigational instruments stopped working, and Miami Air Traffic Control couldn't find them on radar. After several minutes, the fog suddenly cleared, and they found themselves flying directly over Miami Beach. The flight had only taken 47 minutes, when it should have taken at least 75. Gernon later described this experience as a phenomenon he called electronic fog, something he believed could be behind other mysterious disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle.